My name is Danielle Morris, and the day my life changed forever was July 23rd, 2011. It's a date I'll never forget, not because it started any differently than usual, but because of how it ended. I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in a modest home just off Old Scenic Highway. My mom worked nights at the hospital, and my dad ran a tiny record store downtown, a place where the music of soul legends, gospel choirs, and old-school funk poured from cracked speakers and dusty vinyl. Our house was never quiet. Even when life was hard, music gave us a reason to breathe. The soundtrack of my childhood was a blend of Sunday morning worship and Saturday night Michael Jackson. My dad idolized him, said he was a genius, a once-in-a-century kind of star. We'd blast Man in the Mirror while washing dishes, and on good days, he'd pull me into a clumsy two-step across the living room floor. It was joy, it was innocence, and it shaped my heart in ways I didn't even realize back then. As I grew older, I carried my love of music into everything I did. I became a high school teacher, English and arts, mostly, and I always kept a little space in my classroom to inspire the kids. Quotes from Dr. King, Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, and yes, a picture of Michael, glove hand raised mid-performance, eyes lit with passion. I told my students to dream big, to chase greatness. I told them they could be anything, that the world needed their voices. I believed it with all my heart. At church, I sang in the choir and led Bible studies for the teenage girls. I was a good person. At least, I thought I was. I prayed. I gave. I smiled. I said all the right things. But somewhere deep inside, I had never really surrendered. Not fully. My faith was neat, organized, tucked behind Sunday routines and midweek rehearsals. It wasn't messy. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't alive. And maybe that's why God let it all fall apart. That morning, July 23rd, I remember everything so clearly. The sky was unusually clear, the air thick with that southern summer stillness. I was in my garden, bent over a bed of sunflowers, pulling weeds while humming Heal the World. My husband, Terry, was inside making eggs for our boys, and for just a moment, everything felt right. Then it happened. A blinding, stabbing pain tore through the back of my head, like someone had slammed a hot iron spike into my skull. My hands flew to my temples. I gasped. The world tilted, and then everything went silent. I collapsed face first into the soil. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, but I was aware. My spirit, my soul was no longer in my body. I could see it, curled in the dirt, legs twisted unnaturally, my dress snagged on the edge of the flower bed. And then, I began to rise. There's no way to explain the sensation except to say it was both terrifying and beautiful. I wasn't floating like some ghost in a movie. I was being lifted gently, deliberately by a force I couldn't see but could feel in every fiber of what I now understand was my soul. I expected the sky, or stars, or something vaguely celestial. But what I saw was beyond anything I had ever imagined. The ground beneath me shimmered like polished gold, not yellow or brassy gold the way it was always meant to be. Pure, flawless. The air was thick with peace, so tangible I could almost taste it. It was like standing in the middle of a song, a melody I couldn't hear with my ears but felt deep in my bones. And then, I felt it. A presence, stronger than gravity, holier than holiness. It wasn't just near me. It was inside me, around me, through me. I fell to my knees. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. Jesus. I couldn't lift my head. I couldn't speak. My spirit was laid bare. Every secret, every sin, every false smile peeled open like pages in a book only he could read. And I knew I had never truly known him. Not really. I had sung about him, prayed to him, taught about him. But I hadn't lived for him. Not fully. Then he spoke. Danielle, he said. And it wasn't a name anymore. It was a song, a summons, a verdict and an invitation all at once. I've brought you here because you must tell them. Tell who? Tell what? Before I could even form the thought, the world around us began to shift. And what he showed me next would haunt me forever. The light dimmed not in brightness, but in mood. It was as if the peace that had embraced me took a step back, giving room to something heavier. The ground beneath us faded, replaced by a vast open plain. In the distance, I saw them the gates. They weren't the pearly gates I had always pictured in church murals or children's books. These were vast, ancient, and alive, not made of marble or iron, but of some kind of radiant energy. And beyond them, there was a warmth so pure it made my soul ache just to glimpse it. I knew without a doubt that heaven lay on the other side. But we didn't enter. Instead, Jesus turned me toward a long, endless line of souls stretching beyond the horizon. Men, women, young, old, dressed in every imaginable way, some in suits, some in rags, some glowing, others trembling. One by one, they stepped forward, not to a man or a judge, but to an angel, tall and still, with eyes like fire and wings like storm clouds. There were no questions asked, no explanations offered. Instead, each person's life simply played out in the air like a living memory. Every word, every hidden thought, every motive exposed like film projected into the sky. It was terrifying. When someone was found worthy, the angel would nod just once, and the gates would swing open. The sound of it shook the air, and a light, like nothing I've ever seen, poured out. And then, the soul would step in. And when they did, the heavens exploded in song, a celebration, so powerful it made my spirit weep. I wanted to fall on my face and cry, not out of envy but out of awe. But not everyone was welcomed in. Some were met with silence. And then, a slow shake of the angel's head. That was all it took. Without a word, a whirlwind would rise from below, dark, violent, and alive, and it would snatch the soul away, screaming, into the abyss below. Their cries, "Oh God," their cries will never leave me. It wasn't just pain. It was regret, the sound of a soul realizing the truth too late, of understanding, in one final flash, that eternity had just been decided and they had lost. I turned to Jesus, trembling. "Why are there so few?" I asked. His face was so full of sorrow. "Because many believe they know me," he said, "but their hearts are far. They speak my name but serve another. They sing about me but never surrender to me." I began to weep, not for myself, not yet, but for the thousands I saw still waiting in line, for the ones I recognized, people who had sat beside me in church pews, teachers, neighbors, even family. Their faces were filled with confusion, some with confidence, others with dread. And then I saw her, an older woman, gray-haired, dressed plainly, her hands folded in front of her like a schoolgirl. She didn't glow, she didn't strut, but there was something about her, a quiet peace that radiated out like heat from a flame. She stepped forward. The angel nodded before her life even began to show. And heaven erupted. The choir of angels burst forth in a sound so beautiful it felt like it would tear the sky open. Trumpets, voices, thunderous joy, all for her. And I knew, in that moment, this was what Jesus meant. She had lived for him, not to be seen, not to impress, not to build a platform or gather applause, but to serve, to love, to obey. And then, he looked at me, not with anger, but with something even more piercing truth. "Danielle," he asked, "where do you go on Sundays?" It seemed like a small question, but it carried the weight of eternity. I answered too quickly. "To church, Lord. I go to worship you." His gaze didn't change. His eyes seemed to burn with holy fire. "Many churches on earth do not worship me," he said, his voice like thunder wrapped in grief. "They sing about me. They preach about me. But their hearts are far. They worship another, and still call it my name." The words pierced me like a knife. I thought of all the years I had spent in pews, lifting my hands, singing the songs, clapping at sermons. But had I worshipped Jesus, or just a version of him I had shaped to fit my comfort? He didn't wait for an answer. Instead, the world began to shift again. And what came next would tear my soul apart. The air changed. It was as if the warmth of heaven's light was pulled away like a blanket, replaced by a chill that wasn't cold but hollow. empty, oppressive. And then came the darkness. Thick, alive, breathing. It wrapped around us like smoke and shadow, choking out every trace of peace. My chest tightened. My thoughts began to race. Fear clawed its way up my throat. I turned toward Jesus, my voice shaking. "Where are we going?" His reply was gentle but firm. "To the place you must see, so you can warn them." I felt it before I saw it, the weight of a billion regrets pressing down on me like a collapsing building. Then, in an instant, we were there. Hell. There are no human words. No metaphor dark enough, deep enough, cruel enough to capture what I witnessed. It was not just fire. It wasn't just screaming. It was despair in its purest form, the complete and final absence of hope. I stood on what looked like cracked earth, but the ground pulsed like a living thing, glowing with veins of lava that hissed and steamed. A stench filled the air, sulfur, burning flesh, rot. I gagged. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. And then, I saw them. Souls. People. Endless multitudes. Burning. Weeping. Wailing. Their bodies, or what remained of them, were twisted beyond recognition. Some crawling. Some chained. Some curled in corners, screaming with mouths stretched wide, yet no voice left to scream. But they didn't die. They couldn't. The fire consumed but never destroyed. I turned to Jesus, horrified. My lips trembled. "Lord, why?" His face was like stone carved from grief. "Because they would not come to me," he said. "They lived for themselves. They ignored my voice. They chose this." Suddenly, from the shadows, a scream rose above the rest, raw, piercing, familiar. I turned, and my heart dropped. A figure stood hunched in the flames, jerking unnaturally, like a puppet yanked on broken strings. His face was scorched. His hair, once iconic, was singed and patchy. He was surrounded by demons who danced and shrieked with glee, cracking flaming whips across his body. And I knew who it was. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the legend whose music had filled my childhood. He was being forced to dance. Each movement sent spasms of agony through his body. He cried out, "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I never meant to lead them away." His voice was hoarse, his tears mixing with blood and sweat. The demons mocked him. "Dance, Michael. Entertain us. You wanted the stage, now take it." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It was too real, too awful. His cries pierced me, not because he was famous, but because he was human. A man who had been worshipped on earth and was now trapped in eternal torment, not just for what he had done, but for what he had led others to do. And that's when I realized hell is not just for murderers and monsters. It's for the proud, the deceived, the idolized. It's for anyone who lives for everything but Christ. Jesus stood beside me, silent. And then I felt it. The sorrow. Not just mine. His. It radiated off of him like waves, not of anger, but of unbearable sadness. I dropped to my knees and sobbed, "How many, Lord? How many are here?" His answer was the quietest I had heard so far, but it struck harder than any shout. "Too many." I couldn't speak. I could only weep. And then, through my tears, I saw more. As I knelt, trembling, I began to see more faces. Some familiar, some not, but all of them broken, burning, lost. I watched a man claw at the ground, his fingers bloodied and torn, trying to dig his way out of the flames as if there were still a chance to escape. His screams were hoarse, his face twisted with regret. A name rose in my spirit, Pastor Jerome Wallace. He had led a massive church in Atlanta. I remembered watching him once on TV, preaching with a booming voice and a blinding smile. Now, his voice was nothing but screams. He was chained to a wall, flames licking up his legs, smoke curling from his clothes. Demons with burning spears surrounded him, stabbing him when he tried to speak. His eyes met mine, hollow, tormented, filled with the kind of sorrow only eternity could carve. "I lied," he sobbed. "I preached for fame. I built a name for myself, not for him. I twisted his word to make people feel good, so they'd keep giving. I cared more about applause than repentance. I wore his name, but I didn't live his truth. I collapsed, shaking. This wasn't a stranger to me. I had quoted him. I had shared his sermons. But now I saw the truth. Hell makes no exceptions for preachers. Not for status. Not for crowds. Only for hearts that truly belong to Jesus. Jesus looked at me and I couldn't bear it. Not because he was angry, he wasn't. But because I saw what he felt. Grief. Righteous sorrow. Love that had been rejected. Danielle, he said softly, hell was never made for them. It was prepared for the devil and his angels. But many choose to follow them instead of me. The ground groaned beneath us, the screams growing louder, a chorus of regret and despair. And then I heard music, a twisted melody, familiar but wrong. It drifted through the smoke like a memory dragged through the fire. I turned and saw another figure. He was sitting on a jagged rock, clutching a guitar with broken strings. His dreadlocks were burned, his hands blistered and trembling. Tears streamed down his face, and every note he strummed echoed with sorrow. It was Bob Marley. He looked up at me, eyes red and filled with regret. "Why am I here?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I thought I was helping people. I thought love and peace were enough. He wept. I believed in false gods. I told people they could find truth in themselves, in the earth, in the stars, but not in Jesus. I was wrong. I see it now. I see what I led them into. I didn't know, but now I do. His face crumbled. "Tell them," he begged. "Tell them not to follow me. Don't sing my songs. Don't celebrate my name." I led them away from the only truth that could save them. I didn't believe in Jesus, and now I'm lost forever. I couldn't hold back the sobs. I looked at Jesus, hoping, praying for some sign of grace. But his expression didn't change. "Many lift him up," Jesus said, "but he never lifted me. And those who follow his path will follow him here." His words hit me like a boulder. This was not judgment for the sake of cruelty. It was justice. Perfect, righteous, unchanging. And it was too late for them. But not for us. Not yet. Jesus turned to me, his voice rising with urgency. "Danielle, you must tell them. They still sing their songs. They still dance to their music. They follow their words and their ways, but not mine. And when they die, they will come here." The air grew heavier, the darkness thicker, and the pain unbearable. But Jesus wouldn't let me turn away, because I had to see. I had to know, so I could warn. And then, through the smoke, I saw the next figure. Through the swirling black smoke, a figure emerged. Not stumbling, not chained, but performing. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The soul stood on a small platform, glowing red-hot beneath his feet, surrounded by shadows. He moved in short, jerky motions, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. His arms flailed, legs twitching, head lolling from side to side in agony. The air crackled with demonic laughter. Whips cracked, claws scraped, and still he danced. And then I saw his face, or rather, what was left of it. The skin was scorched. His eyes were sunken, rimmed with endless sorrow. But the silhouette, the glove, the remnants of that unmistakable jacket, they made my blood run cold. It was Michael Jackson. Again. Still dancing. Still tormented. Still weeping. I fell to the ground, trembling. No, not again. He looked up. Our eyes met. And though he didn't speak out loud, I heard his voice inside me broken, heavy, raw. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know I was leading them away. I thought I had more time." Every syllable was soaked in regret. His soul, what remained of it, was fractured, shattered, like he had finally seen the full weight of what his life had meant. Not just the music, but the influence. The millions who had followed him, idolized him, modeled their lives after his. I thought it was art. I thought it was purpose. But it was pride, his voice said. I let the world worship me, and I didn't stop it. I didn't point them to God. I wanted the spotlight. And now this is my stage. Tears streamed down his charred cheeks as the demon screamed at him. Dance, Michael. Dance. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Every time he stumbled, they lashed him again. Every time he fell, the platform beneath him blazed brighter, burning his feet until he rose again, sobbing, gasping, moving in tortured rhythms. I wanted to look away, but Jesus made me watch, because I had to feel it. The cost of idolatry, the consequences of misplaced worship. He was loved by the world, Jesus said, but not by me, and those who love the world more than me will share in its fate. I broke. I collapsed in the dirt and sobbed like I never had before. My chest heaved. My stomach churned. The smell of sulfur and burning flesh coated my tongue. Please, I cried out. Please make it stop. But Jesus didn't, because it wasn't over. Not yet. We turned. And that's when I saw ordinary faces. People who looked like me. Teachers, parents, choir singers, youth leaders, moms with Bibles, and men with church badges still pinned to their shirts. All of them screaming, not because they were evil, but because they had ignored him. They had lived decent lives, but without surrender. They had sung in the choir, but never repented. They had preached sermons, but for applause, not truth. They were here, and they were shocked, still screaming, still asking how, still insisting. I thought I was saved. I thought I was doing enough. And the answer echoed back, I never knew you. I pressed my face into my hands. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a warning for someone else. It was truth. A mirror held up to the soul of every person who walks the earth thinking, I'll deal with God later. But later never comes. Jesus knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder. And when he spoke, his voice was heavy with fire and love. Warn them, Danielle. While there is still time. I was certain I couldn't take any more. The screams, the stench, the overwhelming sorrow, it clung to me like smoke in my lungs. But Jesus stood, unwavering, his presence the only thing keeping me from collapsing into the torment that surrounded us. Then the air shifted again. A silence, thick and dreadful, fell across the plain. And slowly, something began to form in the haze ahead. A massive mirror, 10 times the height of a man, made not of glass, but of a surface like liquid steel swirling, pulsing alive. In front of it knelt a man, the same man I had just seen tortured on the stage. Michael Jackson. But this time he was still, quiet, broken. And the mirror, it began to reveal. Not his reflection, but his soul. What I saw was not a slideshow of memories. It was a revelation of truth. Every compromise, every lie, every whispered prayer he ignored, every time he exchanged conviction for applause, every fan that idolized him, every soul that drifted from Jesus while dancing to his rhythm. It wasn't just a sin. It was the sin he had unknowingly led others into. The ripple effect of unspoken influence. I saw crowds screaming his name, falling to their knees not in worship of God but of him. And I saw the darkness it fed. Michael fell to the ground, clawing at his face, screaming, No, no more. Please, not again. I didn't know, but the mirror didn't lie. This wasn't punishment. It was exposure. Eternal, merciless truth. Then the demons came, their laughter now like knives in the air. You wanted to be remembered, didn't you? They hissed. You wanted them to love you. They dragged him back to the stage. And before I could look away, I saw his mouth moving one final time. Don't make the same mistake. The words echoed in my soul like thunder rolling through hollow bones. And then we moved. I don't know how. There were no steps, no wind, no warning. Just a shift like the whole world tilted, and we were elsewhere, deeper, darker. This place felt ancient, forgotten, cursed. And in its center, chained to a wall of flame, was another figure. This man I recognized immediately, not from music, but from my old television screen. He had once stood behind a pulpit, preaching to thousands. Pastor Albert Redding. His name hadn't crossed my mind in years. But there he was, naked, scorched, nailed by wrists and ankles to a burning slab. His cries were wild, full of terror. And the demons, they didn't speak. They watched, waiting, patient, as if his torment came not from fire but from what he was being forced to remember. He looked up and saw me. For a moment, shame overtook his pain. "I preached for fame," he gasped. "I used his name, but I didn't love him. I lied. I wanted the money, the crowd, the power. I told them what they wanted to hear. I built an empire, not a kingdom." And then he wailed, not from pain, but from loss. I knew better. I knew him, and I still chose myself. I turned to Jesus, tears blurring my vision. "Is there no hope for him?" His voice was like a gavel falling in a courtroom that would never open again. "It is finished for him." The finality shattered me. There were no appeals in hell, no second chances. The time to repent is on earth. Once your breath is gone, so is your chance. As we turned to leave that terrible place, the screams rose again, but now I recognized them not just as pain, but as mourning. Mourning the lives that could have been lived for Christ. Mourning the warnings that had been ignored. Mourning the eternity that could never be undone. And Jesus said nothing more, because what he had shown me said everything. We kept moving not by feet, but as if drawn, carried deeper by the weight of what I had witnessed. I didn't want to see more. I didn't think I could survive another moment in that place. But I knew Jesus wasn't finished with me. The darkness thickened again, like walking through oil. My spirit ached, my body wherever it was felt like it had been burned, bruised, stretched, and broken. And yet, I still followed him. Then I heard it, a different kind of scream. Not one of physical torment, but of pure betrayal. As if the soul had only just realized where it was and who had led it there. We approached a pit, jagged and wide like a crater from an ancient war. And inside, I saw a sea of souls, faces twisted in pain and confusion, many looking upward as though still hoping for rescue. And at the edge of the pit, sitting on a scorched bench of stone, was a woman. Her hair matted and tangled, her arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't scream. She whispered. I thought ending it would make the pain stop. Her voice barely carried, but somehow I heard every word. I couldn't live like that anymore. I thought God would understand. I recognized her. Not the face, but the story. Her name was Shaylin. She had been just 22 when she took her own life. Diagnosed with a cruel autoimmune disease that left her body broken and her spirit weary, she had slowly faded into isolation. People didn't understand. Friends vanished. Family grew tired. She stopped trying to explain the pain that never showed on the outside. I remembered reading about her. A candlelight vigil. A few social media posts. And then she was gone. Now, I saw what her final decision had led to. Her soul was trapped in the chasm between sorrow and judgment, not because she had suffered, but because she had rejected the only one who could carry her through it. I didn't know, she whispered, tears falling into ash. I thought dying would set me free. Her words pierced me. I wanted to hold her, to tell her she was loved. But Jesus simply looked at her with a sorrow that words cannot hold. She never gave me her pain, he said. She gave up before she surrendered. It crushed me, not because God was cruel, but because I realized how often we choose to end our pain without ever placing it in his hands. She didn't have to die that way, he added. But I honor every choice, even the ones that break my heart. I broke again. This wasn't a place of vengeance. It was a place of revealed consequences. A place where every shortcut we take around the cross, every idol we cling to, every false savior we trust is finally stripped bare. The silence was shattered by a demonic howl, and suddenly the pit burst into flame. The souls inside shrieked as the fire consumed them, not to destroy, but to continue the cycle. And through it all, Shaylin whispered over and over, I thought it would be over. Jesus turned to me. This is why you must speak, he said, because they think they understand pain, but they do not know the pain that never ends. Then he reached out his hand, and just like that, we began to rise. But not to safety. Not yet. There was one more place he had to take me, and what I would see there would leave a scar on my soul I'd carry for the rest of my days. We rose from the pit, the cries of lost souls still echoing beneath us like a chorus of endless mourning. The air grew thinner, Colder, heavier not from temperature, but from revelation. The weight of truth was suffocating. I knew, somehow, that we were nearing the end of the vision. And then I saw it, a towering gate, black as obsidian, carved with grotesque faces twisted, frozen in agony. Each face was different, each one locked in an expression of eternal regret. The metal seemed to breathe, pulsing with a demonic life of its own. And behind it, I felt a presence so dark, so consuming, that I instinctively stepped backward. Jesus stood still. "This is the final gate," he said. "Few who pass it ever return." It opened with a sound that shook me to my core, like stone grinding against stone, mixed with the cries of 10,000 souls. I wanted to run, to flee, to disappear, but I didn't, because I knew this part was for me. We stepped through, and on the other side, hell was at its worst. The ground was no longer cracked stone or scorched ash, it was alive, a living mass of molten agony. It pulsed beneath our feet like a heartbeat. Every step squelched as if we were walking across flesh. The sky above was black, like ink spilled across the heavens. No stars, no moon, no hint of heaven, just darkness, deep, intelligent darkness. I heard no screams here, not at first, only a low, droning moan like all the pain in the universe humming in one long, endless note. And then I saw them, the ones who had rejected Jesus openly, proudly, publicly. They had mocked his name, laughed at the cross, spoke of God like a fairy tale, and scorned those who followed him. Here, in the deepest part of hell, they were not just being tormented, they were tormented by each other. They clawed, bit, ripped, cursed, like animals driven mad. They had no sense of self anymore, only rage, regret, hatred. And then one turned to me. His eyes were gone sockets, empty, bloodied. His teeth ground together as he tried to speak, and when he did, his voice shook me. "Tell them the devil lied." He collapsed back into the swarm. And then the final revelation came. I looked beyond the mass of tortured souls and saw a throne, jagged and black, carved from skulls, seated upon a mountain of fire. Upon it sat the figure of a beast, clothed in shadows, surrounded by flames. His eyes glowed red, not like fire, but like hatred made visible. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just watched. And I knew without question that it was Satan. He wasn't torturing them. He wasn't doing anything. Because he didn't have to. These souls had chosen to come here. By pride. By pleasure. By rebellion. And now they were his. Forever. And as I stood there, frozen, Jesus spoke one last time. "This is why I died. To keep them from this." His voice cracked not in weakness, but in grief so deep the universe itself seemed to pause to listen. I gave everything, and still they choose death. I fell to the ground, unable to take another step, my face pressed into the burning soil. "Lord, what can I do?" His answer was simple, final, unshakable. "Warn them." And then, like lightning striking the heart of the earth, everything vanished. The fire, the screams, the gates. Hell was gone. I was falling, no, being lifted. The fire vanished. The darkness peeled away. The screams faded like a nightmare slipping from memory, yet I knew they would echo in me forever. The suffocating heat was replaced by coolness, not physical but spiritual, like a balm poured over wounds I didn't know I had. Light broke over me, not harsh, not blinding, healing. It poured into every broken part of me, into the cracks I hadn't even known existed. And then, like a rush of breath returning to starved lungs, I woke up. I was lying on my back, my vision blurred, shapes moving around me, bright lights overhead. The sterile smell of disinfectant told me where I was before my ears caught the words. "She's back." Her heart's beating. The hospital. Machines beeped. Nurses scrambled. A doctor clutched my wrist, his mouth slack with disbelief. "She shouldn't be here," he muttered. "No pulse for 10 minutes. We lost her." But I hadn't been lost. I had been shown. The memory of hell was as vivid as the lights above me. I felt the fire in my bones, the sorrow in my soul, the command in my heart. Warn them. 2 days later, I was discharged. They called it miraculous. They said people don't come back from what I experienced, not with clarity, not without damage. But I did. Every word, every image, every scream was etched into my spirit. I was not the same. I couldn't be. I stepped outside that hospital, and the sky never looked more blue. The wind never sounded so gentle. Children's laughter felt like the most sacred music in the world. I saw everything differently, as if I had died and been reborn. Because in a way I had. I knew what I had to do. I began to speak. At first to my family, then my church, then strangers, online, in person, through letters. I didn't care what people thought. I couldn't. Their eternity mattered more than their opinion of me. I told them hell is real. Not a symbol, not a story, a place. I told them about Michael, about Bob Marley, about the pastor who built a kingdom in his own name, about Shay Lynn and her broken heart. And I told them about Jesus, the only reason I had returned, the only hope that had saved me, the only name that could rescue them. Some mocked me, some cried, some repented, but I didn't stop, because eternity is too long to be wrong. You may not believe me. You may think I imagined it, or dreamed it, or twisted the truth. But if there is even the smallest chance that what I saw is real, then you owe it to your soul to consider it, to fall on your knees and ask, do I truly know him? Not know about him, not go to church, not do good deeds, but know him. Because one day, every one of us will stand before the King. I saw the one whose eyes burn with truth and mercy, who sees through every mask, every motive, every whispered excuse. And when he speaks your name, you'll want to hear, well done. Not, I never knew you. So if you're hearing my voice now, if this story has reached your ears, then know you still have time. You can still turn back. You can still surrender. Jesus is waiting, with scarred hands and open arms. He's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for hearts that are humble, repentant, and ready to love him more than this world. You are loved, you are seen, and you are never too far gone. But don't wait. Don't gamble with eternity, because once you cross over, there are no second chances, and you will remember this moment forever.